Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of the East. This week's episode is going to be a big one. Like, literally, it's going to be a really long one. This build is massive. We're going to build a quarantine island, and it is based on the island of Onrust and Kuiper. I'm not sure if it are two names, but that's how it's being mentioned everywhere. It's basically an island in the Bay of Batavia, and it is, it's a quarantine island. So I looked into it. At first I thought it was something, it's from, back from the Golden Age, but it isn't. This one was actually built way later. And the idea was that people who had traveled to Mecca would go into quarantine when they returned to make sure they wouldn't bring any diseases. So I am not entirely sure what my idea was with this episode. I think we're going for that narrative, that people who came back from their pilgrimage to Mecca would have to go in quarantine. Another function this island often had, at least the one in Kuiper, was a prison. It was actually used as a prison, and there was a marine base. There was sort of a internment camp, which became well known during the Second World War. Which started in 42 in Indonesia. But Holland was invaded in 1940, so all Germans within the colonies were interned in this camp. I'm not sure how they ended up later on, but pretty sure the Japanese used the camp as well as a internment camp for Dutch soldiers and European people living in the East Indies. So these quarantine camps had lots of facilities. They had barracks. As you can see now, I have built those on screen already. They had a furnace room with more like a washing room, which is the building on the right now, which is where they would wash the clothing of the people who would arrive. Large furnaces and, basically just cleaning installations for clothing would be inside. So it also had like medical facilities, which in my idea of this build is the building right next to it, and it's also where they're being processed in and will be brought inside of the internment camp. I'm not sure how long these people would have been interned. Probably not that long, but as long as they would be healthy. So here I'm starting this dock. The thing is, with Onrust, the island before it was a quarantine island, it was actually one of the main staging points of the VOC to invade or conquer Java. So plans would be made on this island because it's a small island in front of a larger town, and this place would be used to stage and the big invasion basically throughout the years, and a large navy base would be there, but there would also be dry docks for ships and all kinds of facilities necessary for the people working there. I read that the people who were working there were only allowed to go up the island once or twice a year, and they would be stationed there for a really long time. So it would have felt like a prison for the people working there. But my idea is that I'm building this this harbor basically as like it's an historical harbor which is still being used today. That's why there's these old walls and old bricks, and that's why these old trees are there. It's just an old place repurposed basically. That was at least my idea. Later on in the build, and I do this off camera, but you will probably see it in a corner of this island, I built a old, like, ruined fortress. It's not great, but it serves to tell the story, basically. So here I'm starting adding these fences, and these fences are, a large part, of course, of the internment camp. And I am basically just, locking in the inmates, or that's, I think, is the right word, the people who'd be travel to Mecca. Health was important, that's why there's a tennis court there. I read that lots of those colonies, quarantine islands, have like soccer fields, tennis fields, all kinds of stuff to promote healthcare and promote, well, being outside, trying not to have everyone inside in the barracks, because of course that's where you get more sick. But another one in Rotterdam, it has like a whole sanatorium with it, with saunas and that kind of stuff. Here I'm adding those small little guardhouses. I got a whole lot of new assets by Peter Bar and Bastet. They contacted me on Discord and they said, we have loads of South American assets which will probably work great in your build. And I'm just so thrilled because they gave me so many assets and they're all really useful. So big shout out to them. They do commissions, so if you need something done, ask them, because they are the kings of Art Deco. It is absolutely fantastic, and I'll use loads of assets in the upcoming builds as well, which they provided. So again, big shout out. I'm adding these hedges here on screen, and I read that that's how the inmates were separated in their barracks. So it's basically not like a prison barracks, but they would add large hedges in between the barracks to make sure people kept their distance from different areas, from different ships, and they won't mingle too much, I guess. That's what I read. I don't know that much about sanatoriums about a quarantine station. So here I'm building the house of the, well, let's call him the director. There will be a government official who would live here and of course has a staff, and who would be in charge of this quarantine station. And he lives right next to it, right outside the fences. But to give you an idea what a quarantine station would have for facilities, they would have a decontamination area, a research facility, an isolation barracks, the barracks of course, contact barracks where inmates could meet, staff housing, director housings, a kitchen, and a morgue, because, well, yeah, people would also just die, of course, on these locations. So it's that's pretty sad if you think about it. Anyways, here I'm adding some small details for the garden for the director's house. I'm just keeping it very basic. Sometimes I find it hard to think how much trees I should add, because at one side I want jungle, but I should try and keep some more open spaces between everything. And here I think I'm adding a lot, and then later on I'll remove a lot, and yeah, that's how it often goes when I'm building something here. I'm thinking, oh, I'm making a line of trees, and later on I realize it's just too much, so I'm just gonna remove them again. And but we all have been there, of course. Oh yeah, I wanted to mention, thank you all so much for all the comments on naming the city. I have loads of new ideas for names because of you guys, so I have to really sit down for it and trying to figure out which one I'm gonna choose. So thanks. Cool thing you see me do here, which I think was really adding to this build, and maybe my favorite part about this island, is these, I'm adding these rocks, and these rocks really make it look like, well, I wanted to add a coral reef, but these rocks really made it, the underwater part surrounding the island alive. And at the end of the episode you see me do it again, and then I'm adding these lighter decals, which makes it look like it's really well, brightly colored underwater. Here I'm starting to update the quay. Actually, at this point we are at like my second build day of this episode. I built the island and then I removed half of it and I started redoing it again. And this pier, at first I really just built it, and later on I realized I really didn't like it. So these assets are by Peter Bar and they are absolutely fantastic. These are like broken roofs, and I use them here to make this like really old and forgotten, well, quay or pier. And I'll use PO to make these lines of poles to put underneath. Otherwise they wouldn't have a top part if I would just use this as. So this looks, well, it makes it really easy. This saves me a whole lot of placing individual assets. So, and I just really enjoy, especially when I make it a little bit darker, it looks great. It just looks run down, forgotten, and that's what I'm doing here as well. I'm adding this house, which is gonna be totally forgotten, and they are made of all kinds of well, basically broken building assets, and they are absolutely fantastic. You can do so much creative stuff with it, so I really like this part. My idea was this building was here before, well, way back when from the VOC age, the golden age for the Dutch, not so golden age for the Indonesians, but and I thought I'll just build this house and then I'll make it look like it is forgotten. And my whole idea was that this island was a bit forgotten, and then they built a more modern facility on top of it. There's this old palace which is going to be on the top of the building, which is going to serve like an old hospital. But mostly, I just want to make this island feel like it has been reinvented for a new function, which is the quarantine station. Here I'm selecting everything, and then I'm turning it to white, and it makes it all very cohesive, and it just looks really cool. And then I'm just gonna do the fun part, which is adding loads of vegetation and trees coming out of it. I should have added ivy now in hindsight, but it is just super cool. Yeah, I'm putting this palm tree straight through it. And well, this year I found out that I could scale down assets, so I could scale down the palm tree as well. So here I'm adding some warehouses, which I'm later on going to remove again, but these assets will also be on the workshop in the future. These are Dutch assets, which are warehouses which are in Batavia, and they just look really cool. But luckily now, because of Peter Bar and Bastet, I have so much more assets which I can use, so it feels very freeing. I can have way more assets which I can use now, so yeah, that helps a lot. Here I'm starting to build this palace building. Later on I realized this is not the building I should use. I needed something bigger and some more grand to the harbor, and it's just an old building on the harbor, and it's kind of meets the same style as the forgotten building right next to it, so that's really cool. Here I'm adding the big, well, it's a palace building, but I'm gonna use it as a hospital or maybe an older sort of sanatorium. That's what I had in mind, like a place where people would go to get strong again after, I don't know, malaria or anything. I don't know which tropical diseases they would have back in those days. I assume malaria. Yeah, I also found out that in the Dutch East Indies they invented DEET, so we call it date, but I'm not sure how they call it in other countries. But it's a Dutch invention for the tropics, which is very widely spread. I'm using it every year for some trip to some country, and I think lots of people do. So yeah, super cool. Just a small little interesting fact out there. Yeah, I'm working on this road surrounding the palace. It's not really a palace. It should be like an old hospital. That's, well, the way I see it. And just a small road to the beach. It's really minimal, actually. I don't do much detailing on the building, but the building itself is so pretty that it doesn't really need anything, honestly. I'm just adding, well, some gardenings like they would do in the late 18th and 19th century, and I think later on I'm also adding these deck chairs, or these old beach chairs on the balconies to imply that people are staying there in their rooms and working on becoming fitter. Here I'm actually adding them these chairs, which are really cool, and just adding them here on the sunny side, which is out of the wind and looking down on the ocean with the fresh air. It just sounds like a really nice place to visit nowadays, actually, come to think about it. And then I'm just starting adding more vegetations and grass and really making the island come alive, making it more, well, cohesive, more dense. And it's hard for me to try to add vegetation if you're not from the area. When I'm building something Dutch, I know exactly how a road would look or how a forest would look, but in the Dutch East Indies I have absolutely no idea. I have seen photos of palm trees and big leafy trees, and I'm just trying to follow up on the style I've done on the mainland with most of the vegetation. You should probably also notice that there's a smaller island right next to it, which I was also planning to fill up with some kind of fortification, but this build just turned out to be so big that I just didn't do it. So perhaps in next episode or in the future. And here I'm starting to add more of those coral reefs again. Anyways, guys, we are nearing the end of the episode. And I think this was a really big one. This was such a large build. And I really, well, I think I kept okay posture for me in trying not to add too much details. But you know, you can get carried away. That's the fun of this game, right? Anyways, guys, thank you all for watching. If you haven't done yet, like and subscribe. If you want early access to assets, buildings, videos, you can also support me on Patreon. And I just want to say thank you all for watching, and we'll see each other in the next episode of the East Indies. This was Jass. Bye!